Hi, okay, so this lesson we are going to discuss the hills like white elephants. I'm going to address the questions that you guys will be doing for your discussion, but I'm not going to give you all the answers because I want you to formulate your own ideas. But I hope after me discussing this story, going over it in depth, you'll feel a little bit more confident in your answers for this. So, the very first question in your discussion is simply whether or not you liked it, and I want you to elaborate on your answers. So, um, I think after me explaining the story a little bit more, might change your answer on number one. So, first, let's just kind of give a rundown of the story. It is written by Ernest Hemingway, and what is important to know about him is that he wrote in the style of writing, he created it. It's called the iceberg theory. So, let's talk about that for a moment because it might make the story make a little bit more sense. So, if you look at the story as a whole, and if you were to say, what's it about? There's a man and a woman at a gas station bar drinking, having a very simplistic conversation. You don't get to know the characters very much. It's not very deep. However, what they're talking about, the issue at hand, is really big. It's a very big decision that they're making, but they're making very, very light of it. And so he's only giving you the tip of the iceberg here, and it's up to us as readers to break away all these pieces of the story to come to our own conclusions. Did she go through with the operation? Did she not? That's one of your questions we'll talk about here in a little bit. But um, so he only is giving us a little bit of information, and it can be hard to follow because it's not he said, she said, the American said, Jig said, and so it can be hard to follow. And so again, I hope that after listening to this and watching this, it'll make things make a little bit more sense. But let's go through the plot summary. Is we have two people, a couple. One is called the American, one is Jig, and they meet up at a train station. They meet at a bar, and they have a discussion. And the whole thing is just them having this discussion. You don't have even really long sentences in it. They're very short and simplistic. And this can give us an indication of what type of relationship they had, which is one of your discussion questions. So let's talk about the characters. And so we have the American and we have Jig. And let's think about their names and what they're being called. We have a gentleman by the name of the American. I highly doubt that is his real name. That is what he is called. And so we are only given that information, and we can use the context clues in this story to come up with our own ideas. Now remember, they're in Spain, and if he's called the American, is he there on business? Is he temporarily living there? Is he married? Is this an affair? We don't know the answers to that because we're not given that, but we can come up to our own interpretations to get to that bigger part of the iceberg to find out more of the story. But Hemingway didn't give that to us, so that's our job to kind of tie the pieces together and figure out what fits, and come to our own conclusions. So we have the American. It is pretty evident throughout this whole thing that he is the more dominant one in this relationship. He's very pressing. They're talking about an operation, and we all know what this operation is. It's an abortion. But they don't talk about it, and they don't use the word abortion. They simply refer to it as an operation. And he's very pushy. And, you'll get this done. I promise it'll be the same as it was. I'll go with you. It's easy. It's nothing. So he's making very light of something. So he's very small, but it's something very, very big. And he's making very, very light of it. So then we have this other character called Jig. I highly doubt that is her real name as well. And so we can come to our own conclusions about why that is. That's a very childish nickname, which could give us the impression that maybe she's very young. I think by her actions in here prove that she's a little bit naive because she's wavering whether or not she wants to have this procedure done. And so, she's going back and forth, and it's a little bit clear that if it were up to her, that she probably would not be having this operation. But he's very pushy, and so she says things like, "Are things going to go back like they used to if I have this done?" And he, "Oh yeah, sure, of course they are." But if you really think about it, do you really think they are? If you think about the depth of their relationship and the names that they're called each other, and the fact that they're meeting at a train station, which we'll talk about in a moment. But it gives us the implication that the relationship is not a deep relationship. It's not a I'm going to love you forever. We're going to have get married and live happily ever after. The story doesn't give us that impression of their relationship. And so it sounds to me as if he's only telling her what she wants to hear so she'll go through with this operation. And so if you also think about it, their relationship is based on alcohol. She even makes a comment and said, this is all we do. This is all we do is drink. Go back to the beginning. In the first part of the story, the waitress comes up, says, what do you have? And she says a beer, and he says, two. I need two beers. And so it's giving us this idea that I'm going to plug my charger in here. So let me plug my computer in here so this doesn't die and I have to start over. Bear with me. All right. So back to the beer. He says, I got to have two beers. Let's order two beers to get through with it. And they're talking about alcohol. So we can get this impression that they spend a lot of their time together drinking alcohol. And if you are in a serious relationship and you love each other equally, then there's probably more depth to your relationship than meeting up at bars and getting drunk. Now let's go back to her name and let's tie this in together. Her name is Jig. That is another word for a shot. Give me a jig of whiskey. Give me a jig of tequila. And so that could kind of give us an idea of why he nicknamed her that. So could this be indicative of him saying she's just my fun little time, my quick fix? So we have all of these clues that give us character information about them and shows us who is, might be older in here, who might be the younger one, more naive, who might be pushing towards having this operation. And so, we all know, and a lot of you may have had to Google it. I'm aware that most of you had to do that, maybe not all. So I would be interested in the discussion. For one, when you find out that this operation is actually an abortion, I'd like to know what your thoughts were. Were you like, no way? Or was it clear throughout the whole story? Because I have found that when I teach this in my face-to-face classes, my classes are mixed. They don't see that. They did not get that at all. And then when it's revealed to them that it's an abortion, they're blown away. They're shocked. And then they go back through and read it and they're like, oh, okay, I guess I see that now. For others, it's very clear. And there's some passages in there that do indicate that this is an abortion. So let's talk about some of the elements of the story. Now you have to discuss symbolism in the discussion board, so I'm not going to give it away. I do want you guys to address things further than just this, but we can't talk about this story without addressing the hills. So the very first thing that she says, let me back up. In the beginning of the story, she talks about looking out the window of Ebro. And it's dry, it's barren. And then on this side, a little later on in the story, she mentions this side, there's a river. It's green, it's lush. So if you think about that in terms of what this issue is, to have the baby, to not have the baby, you look out this window, it's dry and barren, and that could represent no baby. You look out this side and it's water, a river, it's full of greenery, so that could represent the life. No baby, here's a baby. And so this is showing us that Jig is really indecisive here, and she really gives us a lot of clues that indicate she wants to have this baby and doesn't want to go through with this. I do want to make a note here that a lot of times my students will automatically say, she knew she was going to have the abortion, she was drinking. So now we're reading this story and we're thinking about it in our modern times. And we all know that right now, if you went to a bar right now and you saw a pregnant woman drinking, you probably could call the cops, have her arrested, because you don't do that. We now know that drinking while pregnant can cause very severe implications for that baby. However, back when this was written, back in this time frame in the 1920s, that was not known. And so for a pregnant woman to be drinking at a bar, even having multiple drinks, was not uncommon. And so you have to think and try to analyze this in terms of in this time period and not in our time period. We can take bits and pieces of it away. But, keep that in mind that when this was written, that was not considered taboo. So I don't think that you can use that as an argument to say she didn't want the baby, she was going to go through with it. So kind of get that out of your train of thought. But let's go back to the hills. She says the hills like white elephants. So I want to give you, and a lot of this information is in the PowerPoint as well. After you do the discussion, I want you to watch the PowerPoint. All of these will come in handy for our final test. But if you've ever been to a white elephant party, the premise of a white elephant party is for you to bring something that's a gag gift that nobody really wants. You open it up, you're all excited, and you open it up, and it's a toothbrush. And so you really didn't want a toothbrush. But let's back up, and let me tell you where that originated from. Back really long time ago, the ancient monarchs, you would have white elephants, and it was seen as a very social status. It was, if you had a white elephant, then you were up here in society. You lived in castles, you had servants, and they were very rare. White elephants were very rare. So it was very prestigious to have a white elephant. So it started to where if one of the monarchs, one of the rulers, found somebody worthy, or somebody in their facility, their town, did something favorable, then the monarchs would gift them with a white elephant. So I want you to think about it in terms of this. If you were to go on The Price is Right tomorrow, and you win a $100,000 car, your first reaction is you're going to be overly excited. You are going to be jumping up and down excited. And that's what happened with these people when they got a white elephant. But now you get the car home. Now you got to go to the tag agency and you got to buy tag, title, and tax. And I don't teach math, and I don't know what the fees are, but I do know that you are looking at paying thousands of dollars to tag, title, and tax a $100,000 car. And if you don't have that, and you go in and you have $5 to your name, and you go into the tag agency, and you can't pay your taxes on that car, this car has become more of a burden for you than it has been a gift. So now let's go back to the elephants. These people get this white elephant. They're all excited. Heck yeah, they think I'm awesome, so they gave me a white elephant. But then it's like, well, I don't have any money to barely feed my family. How am I going to feed an elephant? I live in a hut, basically. I have no room for an elephant. And so the elephant becomes more of a burden. And then time progressed, and then it became where the monarchs would give the white elephants as kind of a punishment because they started to understand that these elephants were more of a burden. And so I'm going to stop there talking about that because then it progressed to this and this and this. And then we have what it is today where you go to a white elephant party and you get a stupid gift. So next time you go to a white elephant party, you can sound really smart and say, hey, I know where this originated from. You're welcome. So now let's think about how this is used in this story. So she keeps saying they look like white elephants, and he says, how do you know you've never seen one? And so think about it, and so they're talking about this baby. And, they mention, like, maybe I want one. Maybe, how do you know if you've never had one? And so she's looking at these hills. And now the hills are the shape, they're rounded like a pregnant woman's belly. And so that's what she's seeing when she looks out there. And so it's like, how do I know I don't want that? And so what a white elephant is supposed to represent, a burden, but she's starting to question that. Is it really going to be a burden? And so she's really on the fence with this. And so I want to talk about where they're at for a second. They're at a train station. And if you think about a train station, you have the hub, and then you have all the tracks going this way, and trains are coming in, coming out. And so this is representing a crossroads at their life. Do we know which way the train is going to go? No. So you have train tracks that intercross. And I think it's very safe to say that they are at a very big crossroads in their life together with this decision. And they're also at a crossroads because I think they both understand that she's not 100% on board yet. And so we get towards the end, and after they've discussed this and he's tried to convince her, and she's had this attitude of, whatever it takes to keep my man happy, but then she goes back and keeps questioning it. I think that we can interpret the ending to be either way. And so that's one of your discussion questions is, do you think she went through with it? If you read the last line, and this is not verbatim, but she says something, he says, "Are you okay? Do you feel better now?" And she said, "There's nothing wrong with me. I'm fine. I'm okay." So you can look at that in a couple of different ways. Is she fine? Is she okay? Because in her head, she's thinking, I'm going to be fine with my baby without you because I'm keeping my baby. Or I'm fine, whatever you want to do, I'm fine. Is she going back to being complacent, doing whatever her man wants her to do? And so, make sure and there's a lot of symbolism in here, a lot. So, and I don't want you to use the hills because I just told you that in here. So I don't want your discussion questions to be verbatim what I've told you. I want to know what your thoughts are. Really look into the story because there are so many examples of symbolism, and I've given you the symbolism. The hills, you can symbolize a pregnant belly. The white elephant symbolizes this baby. Could it be a burden? Is it a burden? Could it be a burden to him, not a burden to her? And so, don't use that as an example. But there are a lot of other pieces of symbolism in here that are really important and very strategically placed within this story. And so I hope after listening to this, it helps you understand the story. And maybe that will change your answer on number 1. Did you like it? Did you not like it? And so go in there, and I'll be coming in after to respond to you, and I'm really interested in knowing your thoughts and anything else with the story, even if it's not in the discussion. I'd love to hear your thoughts. If something stood out in the story and you didn't understand it, ask me, and I would be more than willing to talk to you about it, clarify some things. And so now that after this is done, you'll go in, do the discussion, and then watch that PowerPoint. Make sure you watch that because that does contain information. It's a visual, that will help you because we will be having a final exam at the end of the semester. So I will be seeing you all very soon.